Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, June the 15th, 2023. Yes, June the 15th, 2023. It's definitely a late night edition. And this is How the Frack We Got Here, a news podcast that's dedicated to give you all the information allowed to make up your own mind for yourself. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan, and of course, as we are a news podcast, guys, we do try to give you the best news from the most reputable sources, as well as watching our language, but sometimes words do fly. But at the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for your viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, probably by the time you're watching this, it's probably going to be a little bit earlier in the day, as it is a little bit of a late night edition throughout the week. But still, we have news. Yes, we have news. At the same time, guys, I would be remiss, honestly, at this point, that if you had told me on my bingo card of 2023, I never thought I would hear the words Donald Trump, second time, an indictment with 37 counts. Long-ass phrase. I get it. I would have never expected that. But yet, here we are.
Now to a day that will be unprecedented in U.S. history. Donald Trump expected to become the first current or former president to be arrested and arraigned on federal criminal charges. He's expected in a Miami courtroom within the next 3 hours. Rena Roy reports from outside the courthouse.
It's a day that will be recorded in history books. Former President Donald Trump scheduled to be arrested and arraigned this afternoon on dozens of federal criminal charges in this Miami courthouse. Trump touching down in Miami Monday. He has remained defiant, insisting he won't drop out of the presidential race, even if he's found guilty, telling radio host Howie Carr,
I just say not guilty. I didn't do anything wrong.
Trump is facing 37 counts, accused of storing classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago resort, some found in a ballroom, storage room, and even a bathroom. Federal prosecutors say the documents contain some of the nation's most sensitive secrets, including defense and weapons capabilities, America's nuclear programs, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. In their indictment, federal prosecutors allege Trump knew he was not authorized to keep the documents, but did so anyway, even allegedly obstructing the investigation by moving dozens of boxes to hide them from his own lawyers and the FBI. The former president already fundraising off of the indictment and calling on his supporters to protest, some from both sides already showing up at Trump's Miami hotel.
So I'm here honestly just to show solidarity and support for my president. I think what they've done to him over the past 6 years was disgusting.
We know what this con artist from New York has gotten away with. Enough is enough. He needs to pay.
Local police joining forces with the Secret Service and U.S. Marshals to beef up security around town.
We're taking this event extremely serious. We know that there is a potential of things taking a turn for the worst, but that's not the Miami way.
Officials say that there are no credible threats of violence. Trump is expected to be arraigned here at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Rena Roy.
Crazy, right? Who knew? 37 counts. 37 counts that he has already pled guilty to at this point. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. When the Department of Justice and the FBI take you to court, there is a 99.9% chance the evidence they have against you is overwhelming. Now, again, does this mean anything? Yes, because this is a federal case. The previous case where he was accused of raping a woman was a civil case in which he lost. Now, because civil case by our Constitution standards, it does not disqualify him for running in the 2024 campaign. However, in this case of the stolen documents that he thought he could have because he thought he could basically declassified things because he didn't read the Constitution when he first became president, that's federal. Where in that case, if he is found guilty of those crimes, not only will he probably be seeing a lengthy jail sentence, he can no longer run as a presidential candidate in the next year's election. Hence why the good old friends over at Fox News, and I know, before you guys start, I usually don't look toward Fox News' way. We've already seen that they are not a news station. They are an entertainment network. There's no one over there that is credible nor journalistic. But in this sense, I just decided, let me just look in the madhouse that is Fox News, and let's see if they're reporting it correctly, or are they doing the Trump spin cycle? Let's start with the only black woman pretending she's white outside of Stacey Dash.
Is this all really about forcing Trump out of the race? Alina Habba is one of the president's attorneys, and she joins me now. Great to see you. We've been together 2 nights in a row, pre-unsealing of the indictment and now. And I want to get your take on why you think it's all happening. Is it, in fact, to keep him from running?
100% they are afraid of Donald Trump, and they should be. He is leading in the polls, and every time they hit him, he just gets up and hits them harder. It is frightening. If you are a Comey, Pelosi, or a Schumer, and you are sitting there in the justice system, as Ray is, and you are not turning over documents that indict a current president, and Donald Trump could take you out. That's got to be frightening for them. But you know what I know? He didn't do anything wrong. We have our day in court, and this indictment is completely one-sided. It is their story. It is who they want to put up, and they take a grand jury of people. They show them their own evidence, and they come after the greatest president we've had and the 47th president. That is what they're doing. That is what they're doing. They're taking away your right to vote, and that is a very scary time for our country.
We saw the president today shake up his legal team a bit, and I know that you're not representing him on this case, but you are close to the former president in your legal advice nonetheless. What can you tell us, if anything, about how different this is going to be as a team compared with how it was even 24 hours ago?
I think when any indictment comes down, you have to assess what the best strategy is. The more information you have, the better. So he's going to select people that everyone thinks is best suited for this case. Now we have some color to it. You have to remember, when there's a grand jury, we don't have details. We don't know what the charges that they're bringing are. We don't have the people with those particular experts.
Okay, so let's just stop there because, number one, it is a Trump lawyer that is doing exactly what she's paid to do. Spin the media, go to a safe site like Fox News and say that everything is bullshit, everything is a lie. They're out to get him. And you should have known it was bullshit when you heard he's the greatest president ever. And that he's selecting his legal team. You know, because Trump always selects. I know I'm a smart person. I pick the smartest people because I'm the smartest person I know. So I pick the best people. Okay. Yeah. Much like the same people that were either indicted, arrested, in jail, or did jail stints. Or 2 of them that actually turned state's evidence against you. But he picks the most best people. And I know what you're thinking. It's his lawyer. His lawyer is supposed to talk about him. Well, let's go to other Fox pundits, Gottlieb, who decided that he was going to talk about Trump. And again, we shouldn't be surprised.
The Orange Menace is heading to court again. Donald Trump landing in Florida earlier ahead of his federal appearance in Miami set for tomorrow. He'll be arraigned and formally charged with 37 federal accounts for allegedly mishandling classified documents. Trump wasting no time hitting back.
In the end, they're not coming after me. They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am. I'm standing in their way, and I always will be. The ridiculous and baseless indictment of me by the Biden administration's weaponized Department of Injustice will go down as among the most horrific abuses of power in the history of our country. This vicious persecution is a travesty of justice.
It's amazing watching Harold nod along with this. The media is cheering on the indictment, but are also worried that a Trump-appointed judge will crash the party.
She was selected fair and square, whether you like that or not. And the reality is, in a case like this, the public won't have confidence whether she acquits or convicts.
I haven't had this much fun reading anything since I read 50 Shades of Grey. We're also dealing with a judge who has been known to give favorable, who was appointed by Trump and has been known to give favorable rulings.
The most significant evidence in the indictment, because of course I read it gleefully.
Yeah. You've said that Trump is Nixon on steroids. How so?
Nixon at least had some sense of shame.
And Obama's former wingman, Eric Holder, thinks Democrats should impeach Trump a third time if he wins.
The notion that you could have a trial, defendant be convicted, somehow win the election, be sworn in as president, or whenever it happens, that seems inconsistent with our notion of fairness, of the rule of law. At that point, I would hope that an impeachment proceeding might be considered, not only considered, brought.
Oh, can't get enough of that. Can't debate, so let's put people in court. You were upset, Judge, about the way they're painting this Trump-appointed judge. Care to elaborate?
Yes, I would love to, and I thank you for coming to me. First of all, wasn't Eric Holder held in contempt of Congress? Yeah, I thought so. But this is classic selective prosecution, Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. Now, let me be real clear on something. They want this judge gone, all right? The decision by the judge as to whether or not she will go is really a personal decision to her. It is a recusal where I and any other judge would say, I feel I can't be fair, therefore it's my call. Now, there is something called a mandatory recusal where they can prove that there is a financial benefit, that you're possibly a part.
So let's stop there because, again, I'm trying to make a point here that Fox News, number one, I will keep saying this because it needs to be said. Fox News is not a real news station. They are an entertainment network. They are there to sensationalize and scare your relatives into buying catheters in gold and whatever commercials they play on the network. But as you can see, instead of them actually talking about Trump, what are they doing? They are doing Trump's work for him. They're spinning the story. They are talking from his lawyers who are being cheerleaders. They are talking about the judge who was appointed by Trump, who was sworn in that's going to be over his case. They're talking about the liberal media, but really they're just showing different television stations, MSN and NBC. But at the same time, Fox News is saying, oh, this is a witch hunt. Who else has been saying that? He basically, again, it's like the cycle of Trump watching Fox while Fox watches Trump. And the cycle begins again. Even more so, Hannity, one of the last remaining heads of the former Hydra machine of Fox News, you would think, again, your network has been called out. You yourself are a no-nonsense kiss ass of the brown-nosy variety. And I say that with the nicest term possible. One would think that, hey, maybe you or Laura Ingraham could possibly come up with a reason why not Trump should be concerned. Nope. Instead of actually using logic, they go fanatical. I wish I could make this up.
We check in now with the great one. I call him the great one. He's the host of Life, Liberty, Levin. Weeknights, weekend Sunday at 9 p.m. Top show on the network. The great one, Mark Levin. Mark, I'll just hand it to you. I know you got a lot to say.
President Trump is 76 years old. If the Department of Justice gets his way, he will die in federal prison. Just by one of these counts, conspiracy to obstruct justice, which has a 20-year maximum sentence. This is a disgusting mark on American history for the future to come by these bandits in the White House, by the Democrat Party that don't play fair anymore. They don't want to just win elections. They want to take control of this country. They want one-party rule. And they have used the Department of Justice and the FBI to get what they want. Merrick Garland is a mob lawyer. That's what he is. Jack Reed is a rogue Soviet-style prosecutor. The Presidential Records Act is not a criminal statute, and it was never intended to be. The Espionage Act of 1917 was passed under Woodrow Wilson, another corrupt president. Woodrow Wilson used it to go after his adversaries, and they imprisoned 2,000 people. So I suppose over there at the Department of Injustice, and this clown prosecutor spent a lot of time at The Hague. They probably figured these laws could be used to try and entrap Trump. All these obstruction issues that they claim, where the former Attorney General, Bill Barr, comes up here and bloviates about it, and all the formers coming on talking about obstruction. They have them on obstruction. There'd be no obstruction issue of any kind, not even in anybody's imagination, had they not criminalized this case.
Told you. There's always a fanatic. Of course, that's Mark Levin. Again, that should tell you everything you want to know. Okay, so thank you for sticking with me through the muck that is Fox News. But it's amazing that, you know what they don't say? They don't talk about the charges. They don't talk about the documents that Trump held. They don't talk about the fact that Trump, knowing he shouldn't have had these documents moved knowingly and caught on his own security cameras where they moved said documents to different places in his Mar-a-Lago home. Fox News says none of that. Fox News talks about, again, this is the spin cycle that they use. They talk about the weaponized Department of Justice, you know, the same department that is used to hold certain people like former presidents accountable. The fact they talk about Merrick Garland, again, the Attorney General, which again, his position is he can go after everybody, the president included. But at the same time, through all of his craziness, he talks about the Espionage Act, which, by the way, was put in place to hold everyone in politics with access to secret or confidential information accountable, including former or current presidents. So again, we really should not be surprised by all this, ladies and gentlemen, that with Fox News, they are going to sit there and spin it any way they can because they are the safe space for GOPs and they're definitely the home team for President Trump, who has already pled guilty earlier this week to 37 counts of holding classified intel that he himself is not supposed to have. But what about Biden? What about Mike Pence? They were caught with classified information. There's a big difference. When they found out about it, they gave it up. Trump refused to give it up. That's why I kept saying the whole entire time during my podcast the last couple of years, look at how close. I said I called Trump a compromised president because, number one, with the Saudi Arabia family, he's compromised. I said he was compromised. He was compromised with the Chinese. I said he was compromised with North Korea because he looked at Kim Jong-il and Vladimir Putin as blueprints because he loved the romanticized idea of being a dictator, of having power, of doing whatever he wants with zero accountability and zero consequence. Basically, he's every white man's dream. He's every white man's wet dream, really, to do whatever he wants without consequence, which we all know that doesn't work for everybody. But in our case, we shouldn't be surprised by Trump. But here's also what is surprising. And I keep saying this all the time. The most dangerous thing in the United States is not just your rice cake warrior Caucasian. It's the fact that when you have a cult-like status among a large number of people that can easily be fleeced, because if you don't think that Trump is taking this opportunity now to raise more money, you're full of it.
Our latest ABC News and Ipsos poll shows 47% of Americans believe the charges are politically motivated. That's compared to 37% who don't and 16% who said they don't know. ABC News politics reporter Brittany Shepard joins me now for more. Brittany, what does this case mean for Trump's chances of winning the Republican nomination?
Well, maybe surprisingly, Diane, it's actually helping him quite a bit. In that same ABC News Ipsos poll, Trump's favorability is the highest it's been in quite a long time. Compared to where he was during that first New York indictment around the April time, his favorabilities were around 25. Not great, but now it's up 5 points at 31. And when we talk to Trump's legal team, Trump talked to his campaign team, it's very clear that he loves it. He's almost like Tinkerbell. The more that people are looking at him and talking about him, and the more that he's the top of the political conversation, the more he glows large and the more popular he is, not only with his 33% of ardent supporters, but with the Republican primary base in general. You know, After his initial indictment in April, Donald Trump's campaign raised $15 million in 2 weeks. That's as much as his entire campaign raised in his first quarter. I think they raised around $18 million. Now, Diane, you can only imagine just how much money Trump is going to be raising in these next 2 weeks. Is it 15? Is it 18? Is it 20? His war chest has always been very, very big, but now it might be instrumentably large, and he's going to have such a wide net that his other challengers are going to have to throw everything they can at him to get him off this popular block.
Now, at least two of Trump's rival Republican candidates have promised to pardon him if they win the presidency. Is it surprising to hear that, or is it surprising to hear that more of them aren't using this against him?
Well, certainly so. It's been really interesting to see how his competitors are breaking up, I think, kind of into three buckets. This first bucket being just outright condemnation. That's the smallest bucket. There you'll find former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who calls Trump a loser, probably one of Trump's least favorite insults. And Asa Hutchinson saying this is deplorable. This kind of action is not suited for a future president of the United States, and calling for him to drop out of the race like he did during that first indictment. But we're not hearing a ton of that from other Republicans. Most Republicans fall into this kind of amorphous, vaguer second bucket, which is, I've read the indictment, I don't love it. Mike Pence is saying things like that. But there might be a two-tier justice system here where folks are much harder on Trump than they would be on Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. And maybe if they were president, they might perhaps pardon him. And then there's this third bucket where Ron DeSantis finds himself. Ron DeSantis, who's running now 30 points behind Trump, where during that first indictment, he only ran 20 points behind Trump, saying this is totally political throughout the whole thing. Donald Trump deserves to be exonerated on these charges.
So what are you watching for as Trump campaigns with these legal battles ongoing?
Two things. One, will this kind of momentum track? Right now, you're seeing how much money he's raising, just how popular he is. Will two more indictments, one out of Georgia and one during January 6th, only create more and more momentum, more and more money for him? And two, if you're a challenger, just how do you break through? Donald Trump is taking all of the political oxygen off of the campaign trail. Right now, if you're in Iowa, New Hampshire, you're making a speech on abortion or on crime, no one is paying attention to you. And that's very frustrating for many of these campaigns as they talk to us and other reporters. And I'm going to be curious to see just how those campaigns attempt to break through in the next year.
All right, ABC News Political Report.
And now Lone should tell you everything you want to know. That even at a time where Trump should be highly concerned, should not only be highly concerned, but should be scared that he'll probably never see the light of day again. He's out there raising campaign money. He's out there still fleecing his people. At the same time, he's making the GOP presidential run very, very difficult. But this is what I say about cults. That people who do believe, these are the same people who do believe that, number one, Trump is innocent. Number two, Trump is the chosen one. Number three, Trump can do no wrong, because they feel like their lives are better, but in reality, because they were looking at reality, they take their heads up the sand and realize, oh shit, it was actually a lot worse under him. But that's the cult. Even more so that you have two candidates saying, hey, if I could become president, I am going to exonerate him. And keep in mind, a while back where we talked with the lawyer said, well, Trump predicted this. What did he predict? Oh, they're going to come after me. They're going to screw the election. No, the election wasn't screwed as much as he tried to chirp about it. It was actually one of the safest elections on record. You lost. I mean, we had to do the same thing when you beat Hillary Clinton, but you didn't beat Hillary Clinton just because of the fact you were the better candidate. You really beat Hillary Clinton because a lot of people looked at her and looked at him and looked at you and looked at her and said, I'd rather not do anything. But more idiots voted than common sense folks. Now, what are we getting to here? That if Trump is indicted, if Trump is found guilty, then yes, he's out of the running, which will make the GOP candidates feel a lot better about themselves. But what does that say right there? You cannot beat a failed con man, reality star, sexual predator because he was found guilty of raping someone. What does that say that you can't beat him on the current issues that are affecting Americans? That kind of says a lot right there. But again, we will follow that story as it progresses. But moving right along, guys, I want to cover the story. I want to cover the next story as well, just because the fact of the matter is, imagine you are a public defense attorney and you are seeing an arrest in progress and you want to do your due diligence and record it. And yet somehow that can get you arrested. I wish I could make this up.
Civil rights attorney who's suing the Lexington Police Department for violations against citizens is arrested in the city this weekend after filming, that is, a traffic stop. She's representing a multitude of residents who she says the police department mistreats daily. Rosalind Anderson joins us in the newsroom with the latest. Roz?
Jill Jefferson was released today after her fine was waived. Now, she spent 2 nights in the Holmes County Jail on what she calls false charges of failing to comply, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. Mississippi civil rights attorney Jill Jefferson embraces Nikki Wade, with whom she shared a jail cell this weekend. Jefferson says she now knows the plight of the clients she's defending in a federal lawsuit against the Lexington Police Department. The attorney says she was arrested Saturday night and threatened by Officer Scott Walters after filming a traffic stop in the town square.
I see what you've been through. I see what you've been through. And nobody should have to live like this. Nobody should have to live in a police state like this in the United States of America.
Last year, Jefferson's firm Julian filed a federal lawsuit on behalf of clients alleging intimidation, harassment, and unlawful imprisonment by the department. Actress Anjanou Ellis Taylor supports the cause.
Right now in Lexington, Mississippi, there are people, Black Mississippians, who are living in a culture of police state terror. How are we going to respond to that?
This is the type of atrocities that are happening in this county and in this city every day, and nobody's doing anything about it because the elected officials of this city, they're benefiting from us.
Now, Jefferson's court date is July 13th. She's requesting that the Department of Justice investigate the Lexington Police Department. The Lexington Police Chief and Mayor have not responded to my request for comment. Rosalind Anderson.
Now think about that for a second. You are a civil rights attorney. You see someone getting pulled over and you decide, hey, I'm going to record. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with recording, folks. I know for some cities and states, there are some laws concerning recording and two-party consent and things of that nature. But if you're law enforcement, yes, you should be held accountable. But what's so crazy about that is that if you've got nothing to do with it except that you're recording it to make sure that everybody stays honest about themselves, and law enforcement comes after you, what does that say about law enforcement in Lexington, Mississippi? See, that's the thing that I just don't get. I truly believe that if you're law enforcement, you should be subject to being recorded at all times. You're already wearing a body cam. What's a bystander a few across the street from you or away from you is really going to matter to you, because the simple fact of the matter is, if you're doing your job, then you should be fine. But even more so, the fact that they went after her because she was recording. And as you can see, the chief of police and mayor have nothing to say about this. If I were her, I would be suing. And I do mean I would be suing. And I really hope she does. But switching gears for a second, guys, because, GOP had this whole thing about attacks, this whole thing about indoctrination that the LGBTQ plus community is trying to turn or trying to change our children into them, or trying to force their way of life onto us. Again, could not be any more nonsensical. But imagine you are basically trying to follow the rules as an educator. You got a book approved with the school board that you can teach the kids, only to have a few parents get butthurt and complain to the school board, which led to a teacher getting fired because he was accused of teaching critical race theory. I wish I could make this up.
Former Charlotte charter school teacher is suing his former employer for wrongful termination. He says the school bent to parent pressure over claims he taught critical race theory in the classroom. Attorneys for Markel Gray, a Black educator, say he used the book Dear Martin during a Black History Month lesson for his 7th grade honors course. This is at Charlotte Secondary School. Now, the novel deals with a teenager's emotions after being racially profiled by law enforcement. His attorney says some parents who are white reportedly complained to school leaders, despite the novel being approved by the administration. The suit alleges the school principal informed Gray his contract was being terminated because of the parental complaints. Gray is suing Charlotte Secondary and its board of directors, saying he was fired in part because of his race.
We understand and believe there was parental pressure that affected this decision. But we believe that this political pressure and this parental pressure was also accompanied by old-fashioned race discrimination.
Gray is seeking damages for lost wages, emotional distress, and attorney's fees. The lawsuit is still pending in federal court. We have reached out to CMS for comment. So far, the district has not responded.
And we don't expect them to. Think about that for a second. Now, keep in mind, teachers have it already hard. I mean, forget the fact you're not getting paid when you should be getting paid. Forget the fact that, you're probably working in overcrowded school. Forget the fact that you have to worry about somebody who is unstable but has access to firearms who may show up at a school that you're working with and cause unbodily harm to how many people they can get a hold of. It's the fact of the matter is that individual decided to make sure that he got a book that was approved by the school board to teach the kids. And yet some parents who may not understand the book, or that book wasn't for them, is going to sit there and complain, how dare you teach critical race theory to my child? Dear Martin is not critical. Dear Martin is not CRT. See, here's the thing, and I hate when I gotta say this, because if critical race theory was really taught in schools, there'd be a lot more children who are quote unquote woke than you wish, than you realize. Critical race theory is not being taught anywhere unless your kid goes to law school, because that's pretty much it. Because America seems, and those in America seem hell-bent on giving this blue skies coming of age story where settlers came to America, did nothing wrong, and just thrived here. That's the lie. I mean, just like the lie about the Civil War and how it started, just like the lie that, 4th of July is for everybody, not realizing that slaves were still around during the 4th of July. It wasn't up until Juneteenth to where a certain place in Galveston, Texas, where Union troops had to ride in to reinforce the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation, which was months ago, to be enforced in the South. That's critical race theory. That I wish we could teach in schools. But to take a book that was approved by the school board and yet some parents still feel butthurt over it, here's my thing to you parents. If you truly believe that you can teach better than the teacher can at the school that your kid goes to, take your kid out and homeschool them. Just do us all a favor. Take your kid out and homeschool them. Because apparently public schooling or private schooling or wherever else they are teaching these things that you feel butthurt about is not for you, it's not for your kid. So homeschool your kid. We'll all be better off for it. Because again, the fact that you have a whole bunch of unqualified idiots out here questioning teachers is the same reason why teachers, especially this one I'm about to show you, who got shot by a 6-year-old and has $1 or $4 million settlement. So what is she doing? She's leaving, as in adios.
The teacher who was shot by a 6-year-old in her classroom will not be returning to the school district. Abigail Zwerner was shot in Newport News, Virginia, back in January. She is suing the district for $40 million, but there's a dispute over whether she resigned or if she was fired. NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach joins us now from Washington. What do we know about the circumstances of her leaving the school district?
Yeah, this has really turned into a bit of a back and forth between the district and that 26-year-old teacher's attorney. Our affiliate Wavy down in Newport News obtained an email exchange between the district and Zwerner from earlier this spring, saying that Newport News School District processed a separation of employment effective close of business on Monday, June 12th. The email outlined the items that Zwerner was to turn in, things like where to address questions regarding leave balances, paychecks, retirement plans, insurance benefits, and it invited her to complete an exit questionnaire. Her attorney, Jeffrey Bright, says he and his client view that exit letter as a firing. But the school district, however, says Zwerner was sent an email asking whether she intends to return or resign at the end of the school year, and that she responded, "I wish to resign, thank you." A week later, Zwerner received that exit letter.
I don't think you can read this any other way other than you've been fired. And that's what she thinks. She doesn't understand it. There's no other communication. The only thing I can think of is they were trying to put pressure on her because we filed suit. And it's outrageous. It really is as outrageous as I've ever seen.
That suit Bright mentioned there is a $40 million lawsuit Zwerner filed against the Newport News School Board and other Rich Neck school administrators, claiming those administrators ignored warnings from staff and students who believed the boy had a gun and posed an imminent threat on the day of the shooting. The school district says her injuries fall under Virginia's Workplace Compensation Act and cannot be addressed with that $40 million lawsuit.
And Gary, how's the school district responding then to the attorney's claims, especially amid all this news surrounding the incident this week?
Well, the district is viewing the email where she said she wishes to resign as final word. In a statement, they say in part that they, quote, "Every employee who is separating from the school division receives a similar communication." And separately, Deja Taylor, the mother of the 6-year-old who shot Zwerner, pled guilty this week to using marijuana while possessing a firearm. And Taylor is also charged with having lied about her marijuana use on a form when she bought the firearm, which her son is alleged to have used to shoot Zwerner.
Somos Chavala y no nos parecemos a otros.
Ooh, didn't catch fast enough. So, I don't blame her. Not at all. Think about that. A 6-year-old who got a gun from their mother who was high and shot their teacher with it. And the same teacher who thankfully survived and has recovered. Hey, you come back to school yet? You come back to the school next year? Hell no. Just for another 6-year-old taking crack at me? No. But this is what happened with teachers. We covered this on a previous podcast. Educators are dropping out by the hundreds. See, law enforcement, armed forces, and educators, along with nurses and other areas that specialize in having a lot of enlistments or signups, are all experiencing droughts. Are we surprised by this? Absolutely not. I don't blame that teacher. You got shot in the chest. I wouldn't want to come back either. No shade at her at all. But again, it just goes to show you that we do need to start treating educators the same way we treat our national defense bill. Up the stakes every year and ask for zero accountability and error and auditing. But shouldn't be surprised. But going back to books, because in this day and age, some books are being banned or some funding trying to be banned because people don't want their children to read certain things. But Illinois law, I have to give it a very progressive mark on this. Why? Because a bill that got pushed that is now law that has been signed in by the governor will penalize libraries that try to ban books.
There were 67 attempts to ban books here in Illinois. Books about coming of age and mental health. Books about LGBTQ plus kids and teens. Books about the Black experience and racism. Renowned classics like The Kite Runner and To Kill a Mockingbird. This is not the first time in history that we've seen this. The United States has gone through periods of protests against works by authors like Charles Darwin and Mark Twain and J.D. Salinger. The argument for banning books always begins with the claim that it's about protecting the children. And yes, of course, we all want to protect our children, so they're reading age-appropriate material. But banning books from libraries isn't about that at all. Book bans are about censorship, marginalizing people, marginalizing ideas and facts. Regimes ban books, not democracies. Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, the Taliban's Afghanistan. We refuse to let a vitriolic strain of white nationalism coursing through our country determine whose histories are told, not in Illinois. This is the land of Lincoln, the home state of the first Black president. Illinois was the first state in the nation to ratify the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. We were the first state in the nation to ratify the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing women the right to vote. And in a few moments, Illinois will become the first state in the nation to officially ban book bans once and for all.
Now think about that for a second. That's actually the smartest thing that really any state could have done and been progressive about it. Because there are some places where they are trying to ban books. And I have to give it to Illinois. I have to give it to the governor. I have to give it to the body there. They're saying for any public library that tries to ban books, you will face charges. I am all for that. And again, kids, if you're watching this podcast, read the banned books. There's just something about them. Stephen King said it best. There's something about banned books they don't want you to read because they don't want you to think. And just like George Carlin once said, you know, if we only had more critical thinking individuals and not worker bees, we would be better off. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because again, they are trying to, and I say by the GOP, they are trying to break down education so bad that they can privatize it. And I'm just being honest, and that's just being honest. At this rate, it's only a matter of time. But moving right along, guys, they want to cover the story as well, because again, Jordan Neely, we covered his story a few weeks back. The man that was choked out by an assailant on a subway train. And I kept saying the whole entire time, how in the world was this man allowed to go home when he just killed a man? Well, that same killer is now indicted.
In New York, a grand jury has indicted Daniel Pennies, the former Marine who placed a homeless man in a fatal chokehold on a subway car. Emily Aketa is following this. Emily, what more do we know?
Lester, we learned late today a grand jury indicted Daniel Penny on second-degree manslaughter, according to two sources familiar with the matter. The 24-year-old Marine veteran was seen on camera in early May putting Jordan Neely in a deadly chokehold on a New York City subway. Witnesses say Neely, who was homeless and suffering from mental illness, had been making threats and harassing passengers on the train before the altercation, according to the assistant district attorney. Penny wasn't arrested for Neely's death until about 2 weeks after the incident, that delay sparking protests in New York City. He recently defended himself in video statements, saying he was just trying to restrain him. If convicted of second-degree manslaughter, Penny could face 15 years behind bars. Tonight, his legal team says they're confident jurors will find Penny's actions on the train were justified. The Manhattan DA.
So, yeah, the thing about that is, though, what's there to be justified about? Because we saw the video. The man sat there and said, I don't care if I go to jail. I'm hungry. I'm going to do this. But again, did he physically attack anybody? Did he, did it seem like he was a little bit over the edge? Things of that nature. Now, that man right there, the former Marine, said in an interview, oh, well, I fear for my life. I fear for the life of the passengers on this train. So I had to do something. You could have subdued him. You didn't have to chokehold him. See, that's the thing about it is from law enforcement to certain Marines or armed forces, they always go to the chokehold. And again, as a student of wrestling, the chokehold is one of the moves that as soon as a person blacks out, you need to let go, or their head or their fading, let go. What the chokehold does, for all those that don't know, you have an artery that literally goes from the heart to the chest to your brain. Now, the chokehold cuts off that blood flow, that artery, and its blood flow to your brain, which means that your brain is getting oxygen deprived, which after a while, if the brain isn't getting oxygen, you pass out. It continues, well, you're not here around for Christmas. That's what happened with Soulja Boy. He put on a chokehold so long that, again, Jordan was not going to be revived. So I don't feel bad that he's getting second-degree manslaughter. He needs to get the maximum. If I was a prosecutor, that's what I would be going for. But again, as that case is going up, we're going to follow that too. But speaking of cases, especially in the case of the 11-year-old that got shot when he called the police, fearing that his mom was in danger from their ex-boyfriend. Well, the cop in the case has just now been suspended without pay. I know.
Officer shot and wounded an 11-year-old boy in his own home.
The officer has now been suspended without pay. We're hearing from him for the first time. DeMarco Morgan has the story.
This morning, the Mississippi officer who shot and injured 11-year-old Adarian Murray after the boy called to 911 for help is speaking out for the first time through his attorney. Indianola Police Sergeant Greg Capers now suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the state's investigation.
Certainly, he wishes none of this happened. None of it happened maliciously, none of it happened intentionally, and none of it happened recklessly. It was a pure accident.
Last month, when I sat down with Adarian, he told me he was awakened by an argument between his mom and her ex-boyfriend and was told by his mom to call police. When police arrived, they ordered everyone in the home to come out with their hands up.
I came out doing this.
Then, describing that moment, he was shot.
It feel like a taser, like a big punch to the chest.
His mother rushing to his side.
I said, "You're not gonna die, baby. You're not gonna die. Just keep talking."
The young boy was hospitalized for 5 days for collapsed lung, a cut on his liver, and fractured ribs. Murray's attorney, Carlos Moore, responding to Officer Capers' suspension in a statement this morning saying, "It was always my belief that it was reckless, and the statute clearly states if it's intentional or reckless, it's aggravated assault."
The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation is investigating the case and will hand over the results to the Mississippi State's Attorney General. Now, the boy's family is currently suing both the officer and the police department, and the officer saying through his attorney that he is sorry for what happened, but he's ready to clear his name.
Ready to clear his name? You shot an 11-year-old. There's no clearing out your name, sir. You shot an 11-year-old. You might as well go ahead and be ready to take the L on that note, because what excuse is there? The 11-year-old, fearing for the parent, fearing for his mom, who was arguing with an ex-boyfriend, called the police. Everybody comes up with their hands up, and this one shaky-ass cop decides to shoot the one person who called 911 in the first place and expects his name to be cleared. Yeah, I don't think fear for my life works the way for black officers the way it does for white officers. Because again, this is why I say the thin blue line and Blue Lives Matter is all lives matter and blue line and Blue Lives Matter. That's why I say that's bullshit. Because I have yet to see one of them stick up for the cop. I've yet to see one of them stick up with the other law enforcement that I mentioned. I have yet to see any of them stand in solidarity with Cop City in Atlanta. And All Lives Matter should be right next to them, but that's why I said it's full of shite. As those two slogans were made to make white people feel included when combating Black Lives Matter. Instead of understanding our plight, they want to join it. It's like they're masochists in so many ways. But speaking of masochists, they actually held off on the federal interest rate, as they should have, because again, I think the chairman learned something.
Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, is announcing a decision right now as we speak on whether to raise interest rates this month.
The Fed has hiked rates 10 times in a row, going back to March of last year. Today's decision comes on the heels of a positive report Tuesday that showed inflation rates have been cut in half from last year's peak. Inflation rose 4% between last May and this May. That's the smallest increase in more than 2 years.
So let's start this hour with NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung. Brian, I know you got your computer behind you.
Yeah.
You have been tracking this in real time. So what do we know?
Yeah, well, the Federal Reserve has decided to keep interest rates steady in the target range of 5 to 5.25%. Essentially, this is the first time in a year and a half that they've decided not to further raise interest rates. Now, for what it's worth, doesn't mean that they're done here. Fed officials have described this as a pause, as a skip of some sort. And actually, economic projections that came alongside this Fed meeting suggest that they could potentially hike another once or twice this year. We'll have to see whether or not they follow through on that in the remaining meetings. But in the statement, they described the economy as expanding at a modest pace. They said that job gains have been robust, as we saw that jobs report not long ago showing unemployment essentially near over 50-year lows. And they did talk about the banking system as well. We know there were some jitters with the failures of Silicon Valley Bank and also First Republic Bank. The Federal Reserve saying the U.S. banking system is sound and resilient. So again, the Federal Reserve holding interest rates steady. For those that are wondering, what does this mean for my mortgage or my car loan?
That's what I was just going to ask.
Well, I'll tell you what it means. That as of this moment, well, before we get to that, it always amazes me how they say, well, the banks and Wall Street are doing all right. Yeah, they're always going to do all right because they're the ones that get the most money from the government. They're the ones that get the bailouts. They're the ones that have been given all these perks. But when it comes to your everyday man, oh no, we have to treat you with more scrutiny. So again, the interest rate, this is how the Fed usually combats rising costs. They make it harder for things to be lent out, borrowed on, or purchased, because they hoped by holding off on spending that we can get our numbers down. Yeah, but here's the problem. Everything has gone up but your paycheck. Seriously. Again, this is why I keep saying the whole entire time, when it comes to inflation, the best way to fix this and unemployment is to pay people a living wage. That's right. Corporations that employ people need to start paying people, because there's no such thing as corporate loyalty, but at the same time, you should be working for $15 an hour or less there. You are worth more than that and are better than that. But with that being said, I do want to move on to our next couple stories before we get to our feel good segment. This one is a head scratcher because we just got through talking about employment rates and job availability, and how I kept saying the entire time, it's not the fact that nobody wants to work, it's the fact that we should be working for a livable wage and not trying to hustle 1, 2, or 3 jobs in order to make the ends meet. Well, there is a certain charger at the IMAX theater I'm about to show where it's not really that, but it's the fact that the way the GOP is combating the nobody wants to work BS, they're looking toward the next generation of kids. Yes, I said kids. And the reason why I said kids is because there's certain laws they're trying to put in place that make it easier for teenagers to work just as hard and long as adults.
The movie theater outside Des Moines is ramping up for a big summer, but finding workers has been a struggle.
We used to have stacks of applications. Now we might have 2 or 3.
That's why the theater's manager says he and others like him in the service industry fought to change the state's child labor law, making it easier to hire teenagers under 16.
A lot of the part of the Iowa Code that dealt with child labor was written as far back as 1906.
State Rep Dave Dio helped to get a new law passed.
I think this is really more about giving students the opportunity, if they want to, if they could work a few more hours for 1 or 2 evenings.
Iowa's new child labor law allows kids under 16 to work more hours in a single day and as late as 9 p.m. during the school year, up to 28 hours a week.
Do you have any concerns that some kids may work too much and not pay attention to their education?
We didn't increase the number of hours per week. We've left that the same.
But it does mean that a 14-year-old could work from 4 until 9 every day after school.
What I'm concerned about are children whose families are facing economic desperation.
Jen Schur is a labor activist who says kids under pressure to make money for their family could drop out of school.
It puts them in a high-risk category for their grade suffering, high-risk category for not completing high school.
And critics also say the bill relaxes the rules around where kids can work, including allowing light assembly jobs. Iowa is not alone. In the last 2 years, 14 states have introduced legislation to loosen child labor laws. 5 have passed it. All of this coming as the federal government says there has been a 69% increase in child labor violations.
Those are the situations in which we're seeing teens often recruited and then hired into highly exploitative work that involves excessive hours, illegal exposure to either hazards or chemicals.
Do you worry that by expanding child labor and changing the law here, it sets a tone that could potentially open the door for companies and industries to take advantage of kids?
If they're breaking the law, they're breaking the law. This doesn't open it up to allow for, for those type of things.
The new law, he says, is written for kids like Asher Hughes.
What are you saving up for?
Mainly a car right now.
Car?
Yeah.
The 15-year-old works at that movie theater.
I'm fine with him working as much as he wants to work, as long as his grades are up.
Does working until 9 seem late to you?
No, not really. He doesn't go to bed at 9. I don't know any teenager that does go to bed at 9 or 10.
It teaches responsibility, Shelley Hughes says, and the value of money at a time when businesses say they could really use the help. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Waukee, Iowa.
After an underground.
Well, here's the thing that always just really bothers me a little bit. how they try to spin certain things. Keep in mind what I just said. The GOP is literally trying to figure out the labor issue. And instead of them saying, hey, we need to pay workers more, they are turning around and saying, let's look at the next generation. Look at these kids who work less than 16 or so hours after school every week. Let's slightly increase it to where they can work. You pretty much just told businesses, hey, it is okay to let minors work longer. And the nonchalant answer from the representative, hey man, if they're breaking the law, they're breaking the law. But kids are able to work longer. And it's amazing where it's like it's still exposing child labor. That's exactly what it's doing. And keep in mind, it wasn't too long ago that we sat there and covered stories about meat processing plants having kids as young as 11, 12 years old working graveyard shifts, doing the exact same things that people worry about when they relax the child labor laws. I mean, even Sarah Huckabee Sanders from the home state of Arkansas made it easier for minors to work longer as long as they have parents' consent. But they're not addressing the problem in the room, that a lot of these jobs are out there are not paying a living wage. They're not paying more. Matter of fact, some of them are paying less. Some of them are trying to use automation, like having those kiosks in fast food places, because again, they don't want to hire people to take the order, because you have this stereotype that if a person is, I can't imagine someone being paid I can't imagine paying someone $25 to $27 an hour flipping burgers. I can, because everything else has gone up. The argument they always try to sit there and say is, well, if we increase the prices, if we increase the wages of employees, everything else is going up. Well, kind of bullshit, because everything else has gone up and employees' wages have remained stagnant. Oh, let's not forget the minimum wage is still horribly, embarrassingly low in 2023. Still $7.29. That alone is a joke. But that's the GOP's response. Let's bring in child workers because we know they want to work, but we're not going to increase their pay. That alone should tell you everything you want to know and why you should be highly concerned. But moving right along, I do got a little bit of local news, especially from my progressively backward state of Tennessee. Garth Brooks is opening a bar and is okay with all kinds of beer being sold at his new establishment. Of course, somebody's going to feel butthurt about Bud Light.
So country superstar Garth Brooks tonight is responding to some backlash he's getting after saying he will serve every brand of beer, including Bud Light, at his new bar in Nashville. And if you're not sure why that's actually news, it should be on a national broadcast that a bar is going to serve Bud Light. Well, it's because of the controversy, the sort of culture war controversy about it. That's after Bud Light partnered with a trans influencer for a social media ad campaign back in April. Here's what Brooks had to say.
I'm a bar owner now. Are we going to have the most popular beers in the thing? Yes. Here's the deal, man. If you want to come to Friends and Low Places, come in. Come in with love. Come in with tolerance, patience. Come in with an open mind. And it's cool.
Stephen Romo is joining us now. And Stephen, it is notable to hear this from Garth Brooks, who is, of course, known for his country music, right? And when you talk about where some of this backlash against Bud Light has come from, there is a storyline here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, Hallie, the backlash that Garth Brooks is seeing right now has been pretty harsh on mine. I actually just looked at his social media pages right before you came to me, and the backlash has gotten even more intense. People saying that they're just done with him, people saying that they may even burn the merchandise they do have from him, certainly saying they're not going to buy anymore. One person even posting a picture of what appeared to be vomit on Garth Brooks' Facebook page. So some disturbing stuff, but not all that surprising. You mentioned the trans influencer, Dylan Mulvaney, who sort of started this whole Bud Light backlash from Pride, who has faced even more than what Garth Brooks is facing right now. From this, we've also seen backlash against Target, even Cracker Barrel now facing backlash online from people who are upset for multiple reasons about the situation for Pride Month, which, by the way, is nothing new, Howie.
The decision to not boycott Bud Light feels somewhat on brand for Garth Brooks, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Some people are surprised by that, but if you've paid any attention to Garth Brooks over the past few decades, this should not be much of a surprise. All the way back in 2000, he was part of a concert called Equality Rocks with George Michael, advocating for LGBTQ plus issues long before many politicians who are now champions for those same issues were a part of any of this. He's also, his late sister Betsy was a member of the LGBTQ plus community. A lot of people pointing to that, maybe opening his eyes to the issues of a community that he himself is not a part of. By the way, something that many families experience once they have someone they actually know within the community.
And so that's why I give Garth Brooks credit. I mean, aside from the fact that, again, love his music, love the fact that he was probably more of the more experimental country music artist out there going into contemporary, but he simply said it best. He said, look, if you want to come to my bar, friends in low places, come with love and come with understanding. Be cool. Have a good time. But if a beer, and this is the part where I gotta say that some rice cake warriors out there, you bleached, you sandpaper castle, you keyboard commandos, there's just something off about you guys. Where if Bud Light decides to do support for a LGBTQ plus person, how does that affect you? I mean, it's just like drag queen shows. If you don't go to Drag Queen Storytime Hour, if you don't go to the drag queen shows that used to be downtown, why does it bother you? I just can't understand. I will never forget when we first covered about the transgender influencer, and that Bud Light sent them cans with their faces on it, and they thought it was the coolest thing. Here comes the keyboard warriors. Oh, well, Bud Light just lost a lifetime fan. I mean, you saw people destroying cases of Bud Light. Kid Rock was shooting, trying to prove his hardcore country American image. Why? It's just as bad as when Colin Kaepernick was made to be the spokesperson for Nike, and you saw people taking their jerseys, taking their Nike shoes, and burning them. I'm like, it really doesn't serve the purpose because you already paid the money. And at the same time, it's a business owner expressing his right to basically have all beers here. And if you know, and to really think about that for a second, that's how twisted some people are. That the idea that something or if a company supports LGBTQ plus, when they think of something as ultra manly, they get bent for no reason. That's what makes me think a lot of them out there are really closet people that are just afraid to come out. I truly believe that, because why else would you be mad about something that has nothing to do with you? That's my question. Why would you? I mean, they even talked about Cracker Barrel, which, by the way, was the next story. Cracker Barrel decided that it wanted to support Pride Month with a Twitter post. But you know what happened when they try to do that? You get stuff like this. From Texas Family Project, we take no pleasure in reporting that at Cracker Barrel has fallen. A once family-friendly establishment has caved to the mob. With a name like Cracker Barrel, it's family-friendly, but the people of color were like, ugh, Cracker Barrel. And it looks like every house in the South you avoid when the sun goes down. But yes, Cracker Barrel try to do it good. They try to do a great thing. We try to, even though they waited till Pride Month to finally say something, but better late than never. But it amazes me so that you have folks out there that, again, will sit there and say, I will never eat a Cracker Barrel. They support the Pride. They're gonna have the Pride flag. They're gonna have LGBTQ people in there. Here's a news flash for you idiots. Businesses run on currency, okay? And to expect a business to take a moral standard sometimes is laughable. and I do mean laughable. So what Garth Brooks decides that he wants to have every beer at his bar. Every beer, I guarantee, especially in Nashville, at every bar is still being carried. I guarantee you can walk into the Wild Horse, you can walk into Toots, you can walk into to News Honky Tonk. You can even walk into the fancy Blake Shelton Red Dog and Jason Aldean's kitchen top rooftop bar and stuff like that. I bet you money Bud Light is still being poured by the freaking gallon at those places by the very same people that say they wouldn't drink it. The point I'm making out of all this is just that for Pride Month, let it be. If it's got nothing to do with you, it's got nothing to do with you. But you, at this point, which I've said, and I find myself saying a lot, the problem is with a lot of people out there is that they don't realize that you can disagree with something and simply not give your opinion. Again, it's just like, to me, it's like same-sex marriage, okay? Why should you worry about what two men do or two women do or two men and two women in a group decide to do all together if it has nothing to do with you? I could care less about same-sex marriages because if two people decide that they want to be happy, more power to them. They should be allowed to do it. Not because of some people, not because they shouldn't be halted, because some people, and that's a small number of you, think differently. The same way with Bud Light and what a business decides to do. Because what a business decides to do is their business, and you have to accept it. Simple as that. Moving right along, guys, we're getting into our feel-good story because usually how the fact we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes maybe do faith humanity, but hey, it's now Thursday, so we are getting close to the weekend, and we want to send you guys out some good vibrations. And hopefully, with this next story, we'll be able to do this. It's a story that we did cover a while back. I want to say about a good year back about a man who worked in sanitation, got his dream shot at Harvard, and now just a few weeks ago was able to cross the line as a Harvard Law graduate.
Rahan Satan.
Like, if I can just get to the place that has the resources, I can take care of the health issues. I can take care of the foreclosure. I can take care of my father being in positions in which he has to compromise his health. And I said, let's get into Harvard Law School. And then less than a year later, it worked. I got accepted to Harvard in March of 2020. My life changed within less than a year. Like in my house now, I was like, welcome to my house. I feel a lot of pride in saying that because I could welcome you into a house that has floors. There's no holes in the ceiling. We have heat. There's no more black mold festering. Like literally everything changed.
Satan.
In my life was just based off of me being a community-oriented individual, and I got that from my dad. My dad was like, just because you're going through something doesn't mean that's an excuse not to help somebody if you can. And I guess like taking that philosophy on in my life has just continued to like prove that you can be community-oriented and still look after yourself.
I mean, props to that young man because again, the fact of getting into Harvard, number one, is amazing in itself. But number two, to graduate, not a lot of people can say that. So I just want to give that man his props. I really, truly do. But with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. Again, I do want to thank everybody that watched as we went live, that liked and shared. All of that is appreciated. I can never thank you enough. But some shameless plugging I do want to get out of the way, guys, before we wrap this up. I do want to shout out my buddy Vaughn at BigVZA. You can definitely check him out at BigVZA on all social media. Check out his YouTube channel with plenty of free music. And if music you're interested in purchasing, definitely check him out there. Also, for me, guys, you can find me BlackBox447 on mostly all socials. I usually do reviews and everything that I read, that I watch, that I play, and gym stuff because I'm trying to get myself back into shape. At the same time, guys, the link that you see at the bottom, maybe make that just a wee bit bigger for you to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, the Optimus Podcast. Also, there are audio versions of this podcast, as well as the other shows. that can be found wherever podcasts can be listened to. Yes, Google, yes, Apple, Spotify, hopefully iHeart. We're trying to get there. And any other places where definitely you get your podcast from. Definitely check us out. Really, guys, at the same time, as I said before, we need to be more about sharing, promoting others. Again, there are people around you that are trying to be their own boss, hang their own door, promote their business, things of that nature. All I'm saying is support your friends the same way you support Beyonce, which means help them out. It literally takes zero energy to do that, but it takes 100% energy to be and be salty. So at the end of the day, simply put, don't be a dick. That being said, guys, the last thing I'll say about how the Frack we got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a very logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first black woman to be the first National Cyber Security Director, and of course, electing, bringing another 4-star military general and giving him his flowers. All great things. When we don't learn from history, that's when we are doomed to repeat it. That's when we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old Congress? But most importantly, how the Frack got here. Take care of yourselves, guys, and we will all get through this. And again, thanks for watching.